Well, back in the early 90s, I went to San Francisco on a business trip. And on Sunday morning, thought, let's go out for a walk. Joseph was with me. And we went walking around, and you know, if you've ever been to San Francisco, you're walking up a lot of the time. I know you have to walk down the same amount of time, but it doesn't feel that way. So we go up, 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 and we end up seeing this beautiful, it was Grace Cathedral. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Grace Cathedral. And of course the doors were open, it was Sunday morning. And so we went inside, and it's the first time I saw a labyrinth. So it's a huge cathedral, if you can picture like a European, style cathedral. And embedded in the floor is a labyrinth. It took my breath away. The light is shining through the stained glass windows. There's people doing something. I had no idea what they were doing in the silence, slowly moving around. It was beautiful, silent. It felt sacred. So sacred space felt like a sacred space. It's an interesting term, because, well, we're surrounded by space, right? Since you woke up this morning, you've probably been in several different spaces in your home. Perhaps you've been in your car, in your yard. We're all in a space right now. So how do we know what is sacred? What makes a place sacred? I'm curious about that because I love that feeling. So I want to know, how can I make a space sacred? Joseph and I have traveled to India 4 times. And each time we went, we stayed about 3 or 4 months. And when we were there, we saw and experienced many sacred places. Some of them we knew about beforehand and went there specifically to see them, but most of them we discovered once we were there. When we arrived at a new place and we spoke with people and talked to people, they would inevitably tell us with pride what was so special about that area. Everywhere we went, there was a holy place. A sacred mountain, a holy river, a special valley, a temple, a tree. People would share their knowledge with us. This is where Krishna started his journey. This is where Hanuman fought the demons. This is where the Buddha attained enlightenment. It got to be a thing, really. It was kind of fun to see how long it would take for us to be in a new place before someone asked us, well, have you been to the sacred fill in the blank? They wanted to tell us how special it was, what had happened there, how blessed they were to live so close to this holy spot. And we visited many, many of these places, magnificent temples and temple complexes where over acres and acres you have several temples, large, small, natural features like mountain peaks, rocks, rivers. In Hinduism, it's believed that all rivers come from heaven. So they are a direct line from the spiritual world to the earthly world. And touching them is like touching heaven. So, of course, we went to the Ganges River. And we went way up north to Rishikesh. And then we thought, okay, so where do we want to actually go down and view and visit the river from? And it was hard to choose a specific spot because, guess what? Every few miles along the river is a sacred spot. Where we went up to Rishikesh is where the Ganges meets the plains for the first time, where this river, this magnificent, beautiful river, comes tumbling out of the Himalaya mountains and meets flat ground. That is a holy spot. 15 miles downstream, 2 other rivers join the Ganges. And guess what? Super holy spot. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the sacred spot we want to visit? When we did actually end up staying in Rishikesh and amongst thousands of pilgrims who had journeyed there from all over India. Because it's the dream of every Hindu to bathe in the Ganges or to die close by so that their ashes can be put into the river. And we spent our days along the river, walking in the beautiful sand banks of the river, among huge boulders that had tumbled out of the mountains and landed in that spot. We could hear the river at night, and all day long we could hear temple bells ringing. We joined hundreds of people, probably maybe even thousands of people, on the riverbank at dusk every night to chant. And then perhaps you've seen pictures of lighting the little candles and the little palm leaf and placing them in the river and watching all these little twinkling lights go downstream. As we traveled in India, we stayed in ashrams, we chanted, prayed, meditated in incredible places. We didn't have to look very hard to find the sacred. What became very evident to us is in India, there is no separation between religious life and everyday life, between the mundane and the sacred. They are one and the same. Every person starts their day in some way acknowledging God. And whether at dawn we could hear the call to prayer from the mosque down the street, or across the street from us was a Hindu temple. And every morning, if we looked out the window, we could see every single person in the neighborhood go to that temple with their children, with their little school backpacks on, going and making their offering and saying their prayers, businessmen with their suitcases, women with their market baskets, ready to go to market. If you entered a shopkeeper's little tiny space in the morning, you would see between the rice and the soap a little teeny spot on the shelf where there would be a photo or a little statue perhaps. There would be some flowers, some offering, some incense burning. And that's always what you smelled if you went into a shop early in the morning, because he had blessed himself and his shop before he opened. It was an amazing atmosphere to live in. And along every road and path, there were temples and shrines. You couldn't walk 100 feet without coming across one. And there would be, sometimes they'd just be on like a pole, and it'd be this beautiful kind of arc shape. And then inside would be, some aspect of God. It could be Lord Shiva, it could be Ganesh or something like that. And then there'd be little marigold flowers there that people had left. There would be incense burning, little candles would be burning. And so imagine my surprise one morning when I was out on a walk and I saw one of these little shrines. And I thought, gonna go pay my respects. And I leaned into it, and there was Mother Mary and baby Jesus in her arms. Also considered a holy place. Candles, flowers, incense burning, and Mary and Jesus. In the book of Exodus, we have a great story of holy ground. When Moses first approaches the burning bush, he's out in the desert, he sees a bush burning, he goes curious, goes up to see what's going on there, and the first thing that happens is he hears the voice of God, he hears the voice of the divine, and it says, "Come no further. Remove your sandals, for the ground on which you stand is holy." So do you think God meant that, that ground that Moses was standing on was holy, and that, if he walked a few steps over this way, that ground wasn't holy? No, of course not. No matter where we are, the ground on which we stand is holy, if we see it that way. There's a beautiful poem from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and she says this: "Earth's crammed with heaven. Earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round and pluck berries." Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round and pluck berries. And that's the challenge, isn't it? To see the sacred in everyday life, in every place we are. Earth is crammed with heaven, if we look. Millions of people travel to sacred spots around the planet. You can read about their, they've written books about it. They've, articles in magazines of miracles, of healing, of epiphanies that people experience in these holy spots. Lourdes, Uluru Rock in Australia, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu. These are places we call sacred or holy. What makes them so? We do. Perhaps when we are in these places, we open our eyes to the sacred that is all around us. And we allow the mystery to become visible. We take off our shoes, meaning we remove anything that stands between us and our experience of the divine. One of my classmates in ministerial school went to Unity of Hawaii, serving as their senior minister. And so, of course, it didn't take me long. It's like, hey, Tim, can I come visit you? He said, yeah, come to Hawaii. So I spent a beautiful week there with my daughter, 10 days actually with my daughter. And during the Sunday service, there is a recognition, as many Sunday services do, of newcomers or visitors. And as we raised our hands to be, identifying ourselves as visitors, I was given this necklace, kukui nuts, also known as candle nuts. In ancient Hawaii, the kukui oil was used to make light because there's oil inside these beads. And all I had to do was take a piece of a spine of a palm leaf and stick it in and light it, and it would burn. To wear a kukui ano ano, a kukui seed lei like this, is to wear light. So why do you think Unity of Hawaii gives these to everyone? To remind us that we are the light within, that we are divine light in physical expression. In Unity, our second principle reminds us that as creations of the Creator, we too are divine. We have bodies, yeah, that's good. I kind of like being on the planet right now. We have minds, but that's not all who we are. That's not all of what we are. We have emotions, we have feelings. We are so much more than that. A line from one of my favorite songs, Spirit-Led, Spirit-Fed, says, "We are made complete in the divine." The line before that, so profound. Nothing can be added to me. Nothing can be added to me. I am made complete in the divine. The last line of our prayer for protection says, "Wherever I am, God is." Wherever we are is sacred. And our challenge is to remember that, to treat ourselves and every place as sacred. So I invite you to, as you enter your week and your world, I invite you to do so with eyes that see the sacred, with the intention to express the sacred wherever you are. We are walking, talking, living, breathing sacred space.